Well, in today's project, we're going to use this teak. This is a nice piece of teak. Well, the reason teak is nice is because it's so dadgum expensive. And this was given to me. That makes it a great deal to work with. So I have a little place in the front yard where I have a little patio section. And we sit out there and have beer 30. I have a little table made out of wrought iron, and it's about seen its last day. So we're going to build an outdoor little table for our patio section. So the challenge we have with building outdoor furniture is what sort of joinery can you have that'll be forever lasting. That's the challenge, because you know, anything's going to be out in the weather, going to expand and contract, going to freeze, going to dry, it's going to roast. So what we're going to do is build a castle joint. We begin this project by having 4 legs. So our legs we've cut are 1.5 inches square by about 18 inches long. Then our apron's going to be 2 inches in depth and 1/2 inch in width, and they're also about 18 inches long. And after you finish drawing your own, you have 3 1/2 inch sections there, and there you're going to cut out the middle section on each of those sides. Now the challenge to make this cut, which is 2 inches deep through this 1.5 inch piece of teak, is to be able to have this pushed up against the fence nice and parallel without wobbling any, and that's the challenge. So it's best that we have a jig that this fits on. So I'm going to build a jig. Some people will call it a tenon jig. That's fine, we can go with that. So we take a sheet of plywood and we're going to cut a piece that's going to match the height of our fence, and this will be the back piece, will go on the back right there. So I have this piece of particle board, and it's probably the truest and squarest that I have, so we're going to cut this to size and use it. So this piece is going to be the vertical portion of our jig that we will go up and down, and our piece will rest up against it. So now we're just brad nailing our vertical piece to the horizontal piece that's on top of the fence, and then we're going to test it, see how it slides, and see if it's square. Leaning out a little bit, or rather top is leaning in, so we'll need to figure out how to make that square up. All right, to keep this top from tilting back, we're going to cut a couple triangle spacers that will sit here and attach here and keep this board vertical. So now we're going to cut a couple pieces right here. So this is the offcut that we had from cutting the vertical piece, and now we're just going to get a couple right triangles to be able to put behind it as our brace to hold it nice and plumb. Now I'm just marking the areas that we're going to have our vertical pieces. I'm getting them marked all the way to the top, so when I brad nail it, I'll know where to shoot the nails into to attach to the back side of it. We're going to add a little bit of this black CA glue here. Accelerator. So I want to make sure that I have my leg exactly square to my piece. So I put my square up here to make sure that's it. So I'm going to take a couple of blocks now that that's, and I want these to hold that, and that'll be great, so I can put each of the legs we're going to cut in here, and they'll be in the exact spot. Except I need to see what I'm cutting down here, so I'll need to lift these up some. So I'll have a couple spacer blocks in here. Help me lift those up So I'll be able to see my cut down here, which is only 2 inches, and this block is about 3.5 inches tall. So now, let's attach these guys to this. So I have my saw blade lined up right to the line that I've marked. Looks like it's about splitting the line. So what I've done is mark that on that side, and then on my table saw guide, I've marked the left side is 1 11/16, which is from this measure. That way I can repeat it and come back when I'm ready to do the next one, so I don't miss my measurements by having to guess and mark each one of the legs. Now I'm beginning my cut, and so I go all the way through, and I make sure I adjust my table saw. Oops, the wrong way. Let's move it out the other way. And we get a saw blade kerf width on each one of the cut. We missed a little there. We'll come back and clean that up. And then just proceed to move on over until we get real close to our line. And then we're going to turn off the saw blade and get it precisely right on the money. So now we got it on the money. We make that cut, and let's test it. All right, now we've raised up our saw blade 2 inches to the height of our rail piece, which is right there, and now we're going to cut our leg dado here. Now we've adjusted our saw blade height to 2 inches, so it'll be able to cut the full width of the apron, which is 2 inches, and we go ahead and hog out the rest of our tenon, and then we're going to turn it 90 degrees and do it again in the perpendicular location. Okay, it fits. Look at that. Perfect fit. Okay, so after cutting our dado in here, we're going to turn it 90 degrees, reposition it, clamp it in, and we're ready to cut the other side. So we know we have 2 inches worth in this one, and we'll give it a whirl and work from outside in. So I stopped at my measurement on my table saw, not necessarily the lines on my drawing. So we're going to see which one is right. Was it my drawing my lines, or was it the actual table saw? So that fits in here like that. So the precise measurement was going off my measurements I had on my ruler for my table saw. After you saw stuff, this is the coolest tool to have. It's just a little blower. I promise you can't live without this. I'll leave a link for this for you down in the show notes. So what I need to do is mark the 1 inch line here on all the pieces, knowing that that's got to line up with this, so I can come back and mark the inside where this cut's going to go for the half lap for the 2 center apron pieces. When you're having pieces that all look alike, that you mark them so you can tell them apart, like number 2 or number 1 or 3 or 4. That way when you're assembling the parts together, they'll go back together in the same fashion. So I have my leg pairs put together, marked, and also the apron marked for the same number that matches the leg. So when I know to put this piece in, it's only going to fit the 3 and 4 spot, and that one's only going to fit the 1 and 2 spot. So the leg apron that goes from here will be 1 and 4. That way we don't get them mixed up. We're back to our table saw. We're going to be using our small part sled, and we use our 1, 2, 3 block. Make sure that our blade is exactly 1 inch. So I've clamped the aprons together, and we're going to cut 2 of them at a time because the half laps are exactly the same size, 1 inch height. Now you get some of these parts, and sometimes they're off just a smidgen. When doing half laps, it's important that they fit exactly That's why I'm trimming these so they'll fit into the 1/2 inch opening of the aprons. Here's what our castle joints look like so far. So we have the 4 posts, we have the bottom, which is cut with the U-channel up. This piece is going to be cut with a 1-inch half lap to create a half lap between the 2 apron pieces. So all we got to do is mark our 1-inch inset, make that cut, and we're ready to go. Okay, here's a first look at the table, dry fit. So it looks good. We've got all our half lap, and so we'll come back and now cut our little corner pieces. Okay, let's talk about joinery for the top to the base. So my piece that we're going to have for the top, we're going to cut 2 inches. This is a 1.5 inch block, so 2 inches will go to here, or it'll look like this. So the question is, how are we going to attach the top to the base? Well, this will probably sit about right here. We're actually going to use the figure 8 fasteners, which are typically used for attaching base to top, but most often they're used in the up-down position, but this will work out fine in just a vertical orientation. So we'll be able to attach the top to the base and have it go from there. Now we're going to cut the pieces for the top. So we want 2 inches square on this, about 18 inches long. So I cut a couple pieces of teak, then I checked my measurement. So now I'm going to put on my small part sled to be able to cut this. We're going to take a nice clean cut on one edge to get it nice and square. I'm going to come back and measure it to get the right length, and that's going to be 18 inches. So I want you to watch. I only mark one piece, and I'm going to cut the other pieces based upon that measurement. This is a relative measurement. So I put the piece up next to it, turn off my saw blade, make it square to the blade, and I cut the second piece a la 2 pieces exactly the same length. Okay, so I got down to cutting the last little bit, so I had this other piece of teak, and I decided, gosh, do I really want to cut on this one big piece just for these 2 14-inch pieces? So I might have to do a little change of plan here. I have a couple of these oak pieces. This is white oak lumber, and they may work as an accent in here to be able to put these guys in here in such a fashion that they add to this teak table with these 2 insert pieces in here, something like that. So that's what we're going to give a try next. All right, so we're going to use our tenon jig to cut tenons on the end of our slats. So I took off this one section here from the prior piece. We're just going to tack on this one to get it to fit. All right, now we can work on cutting our 1/2 inch deep by 1/2 inch wide tenons. Now we have our table saw set up to cut our 1/2 inch tenons. They'll be 1/2 inch deep by 1/2 inch wide, and they'll fit into the dados that we'll cut in the 2 sides of the top. And we wanted it to be a 1/2 inch inset. Those tenons are going to be inserted like this. So all we got to cut is each end of this. So now we get to the part where we need to cut the dados in our side pieces. So I'm going to use my marking gauge to mark those. That'll be the most efficient way to do that. So I've taken one of my edge of my pieces and marked the depth down that this thing needs to sit, and that is the distance from the top of the edge that I need to mark. Now I need to measure the width of the tenon and mark the width that I'll cut into the boards. Now I'm cutting the dado into the side rails, which will hold the tenons that come off the top slats. So now we just run this through table saw number time with the table saw blade raised up to a 1/2 inch. We do that enough times and we'll get it the right fit. We'll do a dry test right now. So it does fit quite nicely. It's quite a bit tight. So the key is I won't be able to get every one of these in. They're all a little bit, so I'm gonna cut one more little smidgen off this other side here. Now we do a dry fit with our slats in. Need a little bit of persuasion, but we can all get them in. So here's the final dry fit. So we have a nice alternating pattern with the white oak in there with the teak to give it a little interest. Kind of a beachy look, wouldn't you think? When you cut the dado in the side pieces, it goes all the way through the ends, but it needs to be a solid piece because we're going to do dowel joinery there. So we'll put little plugs in there to cover the holes. Center line matches the center line. The automatic squeeze centers it automatically between top and bottom. And I have my tape marked for 3/4 there. And we got the holes drilled, empty out sawdust. There we go. So I want these holes to match over here. So I'm gonna put my dowel points in this side over here. I have my dowel points in here and C, and it's gonna go flush up against here. And I have my clamps holding this piece in. I'm gonna tap this in here, and it's gonna leave my marks in here. Got a couple dimples. Kind of light one there and one there. Okay, here's my dry fit. You can see I've got 2 accent pieces of white oak in here. I have the little proud tenons coming through on this side. I was originally gonna trim those to cut down. I think I'm gonna rethink that. I kind of like the way that looks. Okay, the trick to being able to glue this up and not have these guys dancing around on you is I'm going to glue up 1, 2, 3 of the pieces on the frame and leave this side open over here to where I can take it out, maybe. So I've sanded all my leg pieces and my cross members. Now I'm just going to put a little sharp little chamfer on these. Just go down about 3 times and just take a tickle of a little, just to get rid of the sharp edge. So I want to take a little chamfer on this with my router. But you can see this is kind of dicey, so I don't have, kind of dicey because I don't have a whole lot of surface area. So I'm gonna use my tenoning jig one more time to hold it for me as I tipped around a nice soft little chamfer. So that's the bottom of the table leg. That's perfect. That's all you need, just enough. So let's do the other 3. Now we come to the part of the project where it's everybody's favorite. That's the glue up. So you have a little stress in here because you got to have all this put together as you glue it up. You know it's going to be a little bit sticky. We're using Tight Bond 3, has a little waterproof resistance in the glue. And we're going to just slap this on as quick as we can, get our pieces together, and knowing that we're going to have to get our legs straight, we got the clamps to do that. So I'm going to stop here and go to the next step. Here's a tip for you. You saw me using this little orange cup to spread the glue, to hold the glue while I put it in my joints. This is nothing more than a cupcake silicone baking mold. And so the beauty about this, you can put it in here, and when you finish, you scrape all the glue back in your bottle, you use it again, you let it dry out, and when you want to take the glue out, you just turn it inside out. Comes right off. Neat little idea. I'll leave a link for you down Amazon so you can buy it. I have my tabletop turned upside down. This end is open. I have put my slats in here with spacers, and I'm going to do a pin nail in each one of these to hold them. That way, when I glue these others, I won't have such a hard time having them fit in the glue dry. Okay, that's all we needed for those guys. So now they are permanently attached into here. Okay. So now the task is to put these guys in with a touch of glue in these corners, and then we'll come back and after do that, space them, pin them, and we'll be done. See that our teak oil gave it the nice honey brown, medium brown that you expect out of teak. So it's looking great. So now we gotta finish the top and put it on. So now we're going to attach the base to the top. We have it upside down. So here's my figure 8 fasteners. These are the screws that came with it, these black ones. But we wanted longer screws to go in the base down here, so we're going to use some 1-inch screws to drill into the base out here, which is 2 inches deep, so we got plenty of room for that. And we got a table. All right. So if you liked our build on a teak table for Beer 30, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure and subscribe down below. And as usual, come back and see me real soon.